Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Riding the Wave, a dedicated space for mental health awareness and suicide prevention, with the goal of fostering understanding, breaking down stigma, and providing valuable resources for those navigating mental health challenges. Today, I am with one of my favorite people on the planet, Miss Mickey Selge.
Hello.
Hello. If you don't know who she is, she's pretty cool and you should know who she is. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Mickey. I am the mom of Dylan and Gavin, and I am one of the board members on the I'm Glad You Stayed project.
Woohoo! She's pretty cool. Sometimes. Just kidding, all the time. So today we're going to be talking about her story, Dylan's story, everything in between, pretty much. So, my first question for you is, when did you first notice that Dylan was struggling, and how did you figure that out?
We actually did not notice it. That was the summer of COVID. He seemed great. He was talking to friends online and seemed to be having more of a social life than our little one was. Our little one was the one we were a little more concerned about. He seemed depressed and not, he just didn't have a lot of friends here when we moved here before we went into COVID. So he felt a little bit more isolated than Dylan did. And then, it wasn't until October. He actually, 4 years ago, he was currently inpatient. He came to us in mid-October at like 10:30 at night. And one of his friends on Discord had encouraged him to come talk to us. And he had suicide ideation and self-harm at that point. My husband, who is in the Army and has experience with suicidal soldiers, we kept him safe for the night and then followed up in the morning with our family. And when we went to our family doctor, they recommended that we go straight to the ER. And we were in the ER for 3 days before they found him a spot at the U for their inpatient care.
3 days is crazy.
Yes.
Had he attempted before, or was it the ideation and the self-harm?
We found out later that he had thought about it before in June that summer.
Okay.
That we found out later. We had no idea that it had happened at the time.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, he didn't actually attempt. I think he wanted to, but I don't think he actually did anything to attempt.
And how was his hospitalization? Did you think that it helped him? Did he say anything about it?
I don't think it helped him. I think it made things 10 times worse. He learned new self-harm techniques inpatient. I found out that he was having panic attacks in inpatient, which was not something that had ever happened in our house before. He didn't seem like he had anxiety and some of these other things that I clearly have and have always talked to my kids about some of my reactions being anxiety reactions and things like that. But he was always my kid that was always, and Gavin too, they both are great where they're outgoing and they, I just remember we were in Germany for Christmas one year when Kevin was stationed in Poland, and I would get so nervous ordering drinks or anything because I would try to do it in German. I failed all the time. And Dylan, though, had no fear. So that kid I'd be like, Dylan, will you go order me a cappuccino, please? And you can get yourself a donut. And he would go up there with no, just confidence. And I mean, he wasn't speaking German, but he would go up there with no qualms about speaking English and expecting everybody to know what he was talking about. So this whole kid that came out of inpatient, I mean, even before he went inpatient, unless he just really hit it really well, but he came home anxious. And I don't know if it was because of what happened in there. I don't know if it was because he was afraid he was going to have to go back. He never really articulated where that anxiety was coming from. So yeah, he was in there for much longer than we expected, like 2.5 weeks. And they essentially just stabilized him to the point to send him home. And he was still suicidal when he came home.
Yeah. I'm surprised it was 2 weeks for ideation, because usually it's not that long.
Yeah, I wish I had a better answer as to why it continued for so long. And I don't know. I really don't. We really expected it to be 72 hours and then he'd be home. And then it just kept
pushing it back.
They just kept pushing it back and trying to regulate meds. And so, but I know, like I said, though, he was having panic attacks and things in there that I had never experienced, and he didn't have it when he got home either. So
interesting. So now we're going to get into some of the hard stuff. So for our listeners that don't know Dylan's story, March 9th is kind of the day that changed everything. Mm-hmm. It was a little bit after midnight, correct? When the police knocked on your door. When you opened the door to see the police, did you have a gut feeling why they were there? Or what was your reaction to that?
No, I think that, it was like 12:20 at night. And so I had woke up first to the dogs barking and then realized that the doorbell was ringing. And so we have a 2-story house with a basement. So, and we were upstairs. And so I went running downstairs to open the door, and they did say they were there to do a welfare check on Dylan. And even then I knew something was wrong and something something had warranted the police to show up at my house. But it wasn't until, so he was sleeping upstairs at that point. His bedroom was actually in the basement. But after he was inpatient, we had him upstairs with us sleeping at night. And not with us, but his bedroom was upstairs.
He's just in the middle of you and Kevin.
So I ran upstairs to see if he was upstairs. He wasn't upstairs. The police are following me, like asking me questions if he would have gone somewhere. And then I'm running back downstairs. And then I went to the basement where his computer and stuff was set up and where his other bedroom was. And he would hang out in his actual room from time to time. He just slept upstairs. And then it wasn't there. And then it dawned on me, like, okay. And so I knew where to go. I knew the next stop we looked was in the garage. And it wasn't until as soon as I couldn't find him in the basement, then I knew something was very wrong.
Yeah. So how did you tell Gavin, and how, what did he wake up from all of the commotion, or?
Kevin went to go get him. Okay. Kevin did go get him. So Kevin was still I'm just running through the house screaming at this point. Yelling for Kevin before we'd actually found him. And then the police kind of pushed me out of the way to go and attend to him. And then I was just sitting on the kitchen floor, and Kevin came down and got me and picked me up and put me on the couch. And he was like, I have to go get Gavin because you've been screaming. And so he got Gavin and brought him down and sat him beside me. And I was in shock. I just sat there and I remember we ended up watching, we weren't really watching, but we put Avengers movies on. I went on Disney Plus and I had him pick out a movie, and he sat next to me. And so he knew that Dylan was going to the hospital. Well, I did not know Dylan was going to the hospital until Kevin came back inside and said that they had resuscitated and they were headed to the hospital. So.
Wow. And how old was Gavin at this point? He was 12, right?
He was in 6th grade, so probably. Yeah. Yeah, he was 12, yeah.
Yeah. So Dylan was an organ donor. So how did you guys make the decision to donate his organs after? You had to make the decision to take him off of life support. So how do you make the selfless decision to donate his organs after that?
He did, which was great. I was not there when he did it, but he'd already put himself as an organ donor on his license. Okay. So it was nice to know that was his decision as well, which ultimately, because he was under 18, it was our decision. But I have a cousin who had a kidney transplant when he was young. And I believe he had more than one. I think he ended up with either 2 or 3 different transplants. So the organ donation has always been something we've advocated for. And Kevin and I are both organ donors on our license as well. And so it's and the hospital kind of walks you through it too a little bit. So they give you the options and what it's going to look like. So it wasn't, we'd been in the hospital for a couple of days, and the results of his, whatever they took to determine whether or not his brain was going to recover, it was not going to recover. Like it was. So then we started the next steps too. We just didn't really even, it wasn't a huge,
Kevin and I think about it really.
No, Kevin and I were always on the same page with all of this. So I feel like they were like, these are what we can do next. And so our big thing with him and which was a blessing for us is that we didn't have to make really hard decision because he stopped breathing on his own. They were able to take his heart because of that. His brain was not telling him to breathe anymore. Yeah. So it didn't feel like we were taking him off of life support. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like at that point, it was just breathing for him to keep his organs and everything alive. You know, like he wasn't there anymore. So if that wouldn't have happened, if he would have kept initiating breaths, I think it might have been different for us, and maybe even now as we reflect on it, but we luckily did not have to make that decision where that his they go through a whole process to determine brain death, and it's that 12 hours difference that they have to go in, and you cannot initiate. You have to go so long without initiating a breath, and then they do the first exam, and then 12 hours later, as you have not initiated a breath, and they do another exam, and that's when they call it.
Oh, interesting. And like people that don't know Dylan just know that like the fact that he's an organ donor, he would love, right?
Oh, for
don't
sure.
You think?
Oh yeah,
like
for sure.
So proud of himself for being able to do that. Yeah. And I remember when I found out that like he was an organ donor, I just bawled because I was like, he would love this so much.
Right,
and
right.
So after Dylan passed, I remember like we got an email from the school on the 13th. That's how like I found out about it. And I looked because I had found you guys on Facebook. I had done a little bit of searching while he was in the hospital. And I looked at, I don't know why I thought to look, but you guys already had his obituary posted and everything. And you guys were very, very, very honest from the beginning. How did you make that decision, and what led you to, because I know that you had a lot of anxiety about.
Yeah, it's hard. The anxiety about it is real. We were very concerned we worked very closely with West High to make sure that when our post went public about Dylan, that Mitch then was able to follow up very quickly afterwards to reduce the rumors.
Okay. Yeah.
And we didn't want rumors. Like it's always easier to be transparent and tell the truth. And and again, it wasn't. Kind of like with the organ donation, it wasn't even something that it ever occurred to us to hide it. It was. We did do a little bit of fibbing at first. When he first ended up in the hospital, that we had indicated to everyone that there was a cardiac event. Because at that point, we did not know if he was going to recover. Yeah. We still were in the phase of not knowing if he would recover.
Well, and if he did, you don't want
and that wasn't right.
He doesn't want it.
If he doesn't want, it wasn't our story to tell at that point. Yeah. It was his. And while I think ultimately he probably, we had even talked about it for when he was inpatient. And that's sometimes the hard thing too with our situation is even when he came back from inpatient, I was like, just tell me you're inpatient.
Yeah.
It was never even a thought. We were fortunate. It was COVID. You were only going to school half of the week. Some kids were fully online. It was really easy to say that it was something else, right? Yeah. But I was like, there is no shame. There's no, you can absolutely say where you were at. This is your decision on what you want to do.
Yeah.
Ultimately, don't think it ended up even coming up. I don't think anyone even questioned it because everybody because of COVID, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I don't even think that he had anything that he really had to say about it. But yeah, Kevin, when we worked on the obituary when we were still in the hospital, and it just never occurred to us to hide it.
Yeah. I mean, was that like the whole thing is like an out-of-body experience, I feel like. But, like, was that, like, strange to be in the hospital with him writing?
The whole thing was surreal.
Yeah.
Because we planned the funeral, like, when he was in the hospital,
yeah.
right? And the weird thing is, too, is while we were doing these things, moving forward with his services and the obituary, we were still in there loving on him and talking to him and kissing him. And I was able to sleep with him one night. And, like, we were talking to him and snuggling him, all these things. So it was so weird, like, it was weird. Yeah.
Like, that would be like a disconnect in your brain. Like, part of you, like, knows that it's reality, but then it's like he's right there.
Right.
It must have been very confusing. I was also going to say that, like, Dylan and I had talked about his experience inpatient and how he didn't have any, like, which he shouldn't have, but he didn't have any shame about it. He was very open about it. And I thought that was really showed the kind of kid that he was, What has surprised you the most about grief? I mean, obviously it's very, up and down, but
I think at first, for the first year or two, was just how exhausting it was. Like, my exhaustion, it's all of it. Like, it's something you feel in your whole body. Like, it's just overwhelming. And I know I've talked about some of this before, and people that have seen some of our other stuff have heard this already, but it took 2 or 3 months before we cooked again, like, we couldn't even cook we would get home. It took us, I think we were both off of work for a while, and then we went back to work just to try to have some normalcy in our life. But in the first few months, I didn't know how I was going to do anything normal again, right? Like, walking and listening to an audiobook, or going out with my friends, or doing dinner. Like, how do you do the things you used to do when a piece of you is missing?
Yeah.
And slowly we did get there. It's still hard though. Like, there's still, like, we had last night with Kevin's birthday was yesterday, and our internet was out. So
of course.
So instead of doing our normal routine of watching a show and doing all this stuff, we played a game with Gavin. We played Catan, and that was something the 4 of us would do together, like, we would switch. And so things like that are still hard when you've got, we went from years of having 4 of us playing games to now it's just the 3 of us. So, and Gavin doesn't cheat as much as Dylan does. So it's,
that's probably weird. Like, where's the cheating?
Right?
This is not normal. This is
not normal. Someone should be hoarding cards or doing something.
So how has your perspective on life changed?
It's short. Do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. We're all here for a limited amount of time, and one of the best things about Dylan's life growing up, because we were in the military, we did have the opportunity to do a lot of things. We lived overseas. We lived in Germany. We've lived in Hawaii. We've lived in different parts of the country where you could experience different things, and because he got to live a lot of life in his short 16 years. And so for others that have not had the opportunity to do that, like, go live, go travel if you want. If you don't want to travel, then don't travel. Like, just
do things that fill your cup.
Yes. Do things that fill your cup for sure. For sure. Yeah. It's been a lot different.
Yeah. I'm sure. Are there particular days or times of the day when you feel him with you more than others?
No, I don't. I mean, I feel like he's with me all the time.
Yeah.
which is weird. And I don't know, again, I don't know if that is because of Kevin and I have been married. We just celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary.
Yay.
And he spent a lot of time away from us deployed.
Yeah.
And so, again, like I said this earlier with compartmentalizing, but it's kind of that same feeling I just had like when Kevin was gone, but he was still here and a part of our lives.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of my biggest things as we've progressed down this grief journey is that while Dylan's loss is evident every single day, but I do like feel like he's here every single day.
Yeah. He's probably giving you bunny ears right now.
Probably.
Or something.
Yeah. Something ridiculous.
Yeah. What do you hope people remember the most about Dylan?
His smile and his laugh. Like, you know, like we had so many people, and this was kind of the hard thing too. When we lost him and when we were in the hospital, about how many people's lives he touched.
Yeah.
Because he was approachable and happy and always smiling. Now, he always had a sarcastic comment or all the other things that go along with being a teenage boy.
Yeah.
But so many people just commented on like his smile and his laugh and being approachable.
And the sweetest kid ever.
Right.
Sometime. What I remember the most about Dylan probably is just, I guess approachable is a good word. Just like he would initiate conversations. I'm like very shy when I first meet people, and I don't like to initiate conversation because I'm like, what if they don't want to talk to me? Like, oh my gosh. And he always would start conversations, and he would always be so open to talking about everything. And he just never made me feel like I was weird, or like, even if he thought I was weird, like he would like go along with it, which was like really nice. So yeah, I remember that. And just how open he was to talk about like everything. Like I was having a panic attack one time, and he was like giving me advice on like, you know, try a stress ball, try this. And I was like, this kid is like an old soul for real. Like, this is insane. Like, just very like mature in parts of life. So.
Right. Yeah.
How does your family honor Dylan, and what does celebrating him look like now?
I think one of the best things we do to honor him is talk about him all the time. I was just telling Gavin a story probably a couple days ago. He is a sophomore in high school right now, which is when when the mental health struggles really came to light with Dylan. And so I don't remember what we were talking about the other day. And I told him, I was just waiting for the next shoe to drop. Like, you can't be a good kid all the time. Like, you're going to make mistakes. Something is going to happen, and it'll be fine, and we'll work through it. And he questioned me, and I'm like, your brother was sneaking out of the house, and I had no idea until later. I'm like, so I said it's but I'm like, please don't sneak out of the house. That was terrible to find out about later. But we talk about him all the time. Like, he is still so much a part of our lives every single day. Yeah. A lot of the choices we make, he is influenced in some way, shape, or form. And then we just celebrate his birthday and things like that. And again, also making sure that Gavin gets us. And and of course, things are different. They'll never be the same as they were before, but we try very hard to give Gavin I wouldn't say normal life, but
his own experience.
Yeah.
What do you guys do for Dylan's birthday? Like, do you have any annual traditions that you do that you've kept?
That year when he turned 16, we went to Joseph's Steakhouse. So we go there for his birthday every year so far. So we'll see if that continues. Yeah. But, and then last year it was super fun. We had, It was on a Saturday, and Gavin actually had a swim meet that day too.
Oh,
so we
right.
got to spend it too with a lot of people that knew Dylan as well.
Yeah.
And then we had a lot of people approach us after the swim meet that had realized it was Dylan's birthday and came and loved on us a little bit. And then we all went home, took a nap, and went out to eat at Joseph's.
Yeah. Well, and in his element at a swim meet.
Yes,
too.
exactly.
So that's so special. I know. I was thinking, like, for his 21st birthday, we should all get drunk.
I mean, yes, we could do that.
We could.
We'll go take a bottle of wine down to his grave and give him a toast.
No matter how much snow is there, no matter what.
No matter what.
So what made you decide to join as a board member for the I'm Glad You Stayed project?
I loved, and I have been, was vocal about this even from the get-go, is how important it is for kids to be teaching kids and kids to be opening up to kids and kids to know how to help their friends. Like we knew that there were kids that he had been in touch with that day and that evening. And we were so concerned about everybody that was involved. Like we just wanted to make sure everyone was okay. Like the kids that we knew that were at West High, like we made sure the school knew who those individuals were so that they could also either reach out to parents or keep an eye on the kids. With we just really wanting to have resources for those kids. And I think we realized it was COVID and it was spring break. So things might not have happened the way they would have if it was a normal year and if it wasn't spring break. But I don't know that the kids necessarily felt that supported in that moment by the grown-ups. Yeah. But the kids don't listen to the grown-ups anymore. This is what I've learned. And so we really needed kids to advocate for themselves and be able to advocate for each other and recognize the signs of each other. So when you had gone into the school for that very first Suicide Awareness Week and had that pamphlet that was phenomenal, and then realizing that you were doing something that was started by a teenager for teenagers. Yeah. And as it just continued, once we got to the point where we needed to have a board and stuff, I was absolutely honored to be a part of it and to continue to share Dylan's story. Mm-hmm. And I feel passionate about kids helping kids. Yeah.
What surprised you the most about the I'm Glad You Stayed project?
Oh my goodness. The reach we've had, I mean, even coming in here today, the girl signing us in knows about our project, you know, I find it fascinating, and it just shows the need that it has created, or one of my favorite movies, Meet the Robinsons.
Yes.
What is it? It's,
love that.
Find a need, fill a need, find a need. I don't remember what it is, but it was something that was needing to be done, and I think people have responded to it. So the response has been phenomenal. Yeah, nothing I could have ever expected when we first started.
Yeah, I know. Me neither. I know. I think it's been really crazy that the fact that we're all over the world. Yeah. I think that's been something, I don't know. I don't think it will ever really hit me. Right. The gravity of it.
And a lot of it is your pamphlet. Yeah. That pamphlet it was the catalyst for all of it, and it just empowers kids. And I think a lot of times kids need to feel empowered, and grownups need to be empowered by giving kids information that can help save their lives or their friends' lives. And I think it gives us a way to do that too. Yeah.
And I like how parents can use our pamphlet just as much as teens, So, and adults can use it. Anybody can use it. Last question. What is something you want other parents to know if they have children that are struggling?
I guess that it can happen to you. We do hear lots of the happy ending stories. Yeah. And mine is not a happy ending story. And it can happen to anybody, Right. We've said this before too, we were a family that We eat dinner together every single night. We have conversations with our kids. We empowered them to be independent, but then also they knew they could rely on us for things. I do get upset when people tell me it's the most preventable death.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how else there was nothing else I could do to prevent it. Like, ultimately, in that moment, he had to make the decision to stay.
Yeah.
Like, is it preventable for people that don't have a suicide mind? For sure. I'm sure that people think it's preventable. Do I wish that it was not something that people thought of as a solution? 100%. And in that way, could it be preventable? Absolutely. But we are going to have to do a much better job of taking suicide out of the media, out of the books we read, because we were just watching a show the other day, and a woman lost her husband and her son and then ended her life. You know, like, we have to stop showing kids that if you get to a hard part in life, that is something that is reasonable to be done.
Yeah.
Again, though, I don't have a suicidal mind. So I mean, I don't know, like, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it doesn't matter what we see on the media. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But yes, I don't feel like Dylan's death was preventable, because I don't know what else we could have done.
Only he could have prevented it.
Only he could have, you know.
That's the way it's preventable. Yeah. Well, because you could argue that murder is the most preventable.
Right.
Kind of death.
Right.
Because they have to make a decision to not murder someone. Like, you think of, like, Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer. Like, they could have just, like, done something else. Like, and they chose to end the lives of however many people. So, at the end of the day, it's you have to make the decision, the conscious decision to either, like, get in bed and go to sleep or take a shower, whatever you need to do. So.
And, you know, and maybe this is more when they think about it as a preventable death. When you're under 18, you're essentially your parents' responsibility, you know? Yeah. So maybe it's because in teenager suicide, the parents feel responsible, and so saying it's a preventable death to parents is much harder than somebody else, than a grown-up, possibly, that could have made a different choice, you know?
Yeah.
Other thing I just wanted to talk about really quick too is that teenage suicide does not always mean there's family problems. I know I did talk about that, about how what Dylan's like, and maybe Dylan didn't want the life he had. Maybe he did not like having parents that made him sit down to eat dinner every night and take his phone away and couldn't have it at the table. I mean, I don't know, but there is a huge perception, which caused part of my anxiety after we lost him, was the perception is there was something wrong at home, right? And that it could be the only reason that a kid could want to end his life is because of something going on at home. And it is, you and I have talked about this before. I mean, it's been almost 4 years now, and I still wait for somebody to come out and say that I contributed this somehow, you know. And this was not, he was so loved and all of those things, you know, and there was a lot going on in his life that had nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
You know, like, he had a lot of feelings about a lot of things that he did and said, and he was impulsive, and he did say mean things to friends from time to time. He would just, like all kids do, no one's perfect. And so he was dealing with a lot of his own issues that had nothing to do with us. And it has taken a long time, and I'm still not all the way there yet. I don't know. I don't know how we could have prevented it.
Well, and even, like, say that someone, like, writes a note before doing it and says, this is the person, like, think of 13 Reasons Why.
Yeah.
Like, this is, you know, you did this and this is why I did it. Even then, it's not that person's, you know, like, the person that's targeted fault. Like, at the end of the day, the person that dies by suicide makes the decision to end their life, and it's not one person's fault.
Right.
Or
and I
any
would venture to
group's
say it's
fault.
nobody's. It's nobody's fault.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the other thing that's really hard to understand with it too, is that the same thing could happen to a different person and they would make a different choice. You know, like it just kind of has to do with where your mind goes and wanting to end the pain. And you can't put that on yourself.
Yeah.
I think in those situations, just because, I mean, it's just like you could say something that you would say to somebody else and it would be fine. You know, like it's.
When you think about like society and like the media, like Robin Williams died by suicide, and there, you know, you don't hear people say, oh, well, I mean, I'm sure there are people, but, you know, you hear more people say, what a loss. That it was Robin Williams and not, how can you do that to your family? How could you do that? And this and this and this. And it's because it's a chemical imbalance. Like, you could have so much money. You could have everything you've ever wanted. You can be as successful as you want to, and your brain could still not process things the way that, like, your next door neighbor's does, you know?
I 100, and that's been kind of one of the maybe one of the biggest things to really realize is that it's just where certain people's brains, that's just how they're wired. At the same way, like he also was an ADHD. He had ADHD, you know, and so impulsivity was huge for his diagnosis, which I'm sure also played a role in his decision making that night. But he just didn't want to. It's a chemical imbalance. I guess it's the only. I mean, I take medication for my anxiety because it's a chemical imbalance, you know, in my brain, where other people can manage their day-to-day stress. And I will admit, I have lots of first world problems, you know, like
me too.
There's nothing that major going on in my life that I should have until Dylan. But it's just a chemical imbalance in my brain, and then I just don't process stress very well.
We don't shame people who have diseases or cancer because they can't help that. So we shouldn't judge or blame people with a chemical imbalance.
And I would say even with the ADHD, like we had lots of people comment to us about the fact that he was on meds for it, and if we'd tried anything else before we tried meds.
Oh my God.
Which we spent years.
Oh, I wish I would have thought of that. I wish I would have oh my, why did we do medication? That is crazy. Gosh.
Yeah. So.
Okay, well, that concludes the episode. If you or someone you know is struggling with suicidal ideation or thoughts of acting on an urge to take your life, call 988 or text HOME to 741-741, or call 911 in immediate crisis. Thank you, Mickey.
You're welcome.